Stay quiet. Don't move. The words left my mouth before my brain could catch up, soft enough that only he could hear, sharp enough that even I felt the edge of them. I was just a waitress halfway through a double shift, my feet aching inside worn sneakers, my hands smelling like coffee and citrus cleaner, and yet somehow I was standing 2 feet from the most dangerous man in the room, Jack Wick, and telling him what to do. The restaurant hummed around us, low jazz bleeding from hidden speakers, glassware chiming under, warm amber lights, the kind of place where a single steak cost more than my weekly groceries, and still something felt wrong. Not loud, not obvious, just off. I noticed it 10 minutes ago while refilling water glasses, the way one of the men at Jack Wick's table kept adjusting his cuff like it didn't sit right, the way his eyes moved a fraction too often, scanning, calculating, not relaxed like the others. I tried to ignore it at first because people like Jack Wick didn't need saving. They were the storm, not the ones caught in it. But then the man shifted his weight and I saw it, a flicker of tension in his hand, a decision forming, and my chest tightened like I was the one about to fall. I stepped closer under the excuse of clearing plates, my pulse loud in my ears. And that's when Jack Wick looked at me for the first time. Really looked, like he could peel every thought straight out of my head. His eyes were steady, unreadable, the kind that didn't ask questions because they already knew the answers. And for a split second, I almost backed away, almost pretended I saw nothing, almost chose safety. But then the man's fingers twitched again and instinct took over. Stay quiet. Don't move, I whispered, barely breathing the words. And something impossible happened. Jack Wick listened. He didn't turn, didn't react, didn't even blink, just stilled in a way that made the air around us feel tighter, like the entire room had been paused without anyone noticing. Time stretched thin, every second pulling longer than it should, and I realized I was holding my breath, waiting to see if I'd just made the biggest mistake of my life. The man at his side shifted again, closer now, too close, and I felt my nails press into my palm as I fought the urge to grab Jack Wick's sleeve and drag him back. Instead, I stayed exactly where I was, heart racing, eyes locked on the smallest movements, trusting a stranger I had no reason to trust. Then everything changed in a blink, a subtle shift, a silent exchange of awareness, and suddenly the tension snapped like a wire pulled too tight. I stepped back instinctively, the tray in my hand trembling as the moment broke open into something I couldn't fully see but could definitely feel. Voices lowered, chairs scraped softly against the floor, and within seconds the room settled again like nothing had happened at all, like I'd imagined the entire thing. But I hadn't, because when I looked up, Jack Wick was already looking at me, not confused, not angry, just focused, like I'd become something he needed to understand. He stood slowly, adjusting his jacket with calm precision, then closed the distance between us until I could feel the weight of his presence without him touching me. "You saw it," he said quietly, his voice low and controlled, and I swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how small my world was compared to his. I nodded before I could stop myself. For a moment, I thought he might thank me, or dismiss me, or pretend it never happened. Instead, his gaze sharpened, something unreadable flickering beneath the surface. "Then you don't get to walk away," he added, just as calm, just as certain, and in that instant, I understood that whatever line I had just crossed, there was no going back. I should have walked away the second he said it, should have nodded, apologized, pretended I did not understand what he meant, but my feet stayed rooted to the polished floor like they belonged to someone braver or far more foolish than me. The restaurant carried on around us, forks against plates, quiet laughter, the low hum of conversations that had no idea how close they had come to something breaking. And yet all I could hear was my own heartbeat and the silence between Jack Wick and me. I tightened my grip on the empty tray, trying to anchor myself to something normal, something safe. But nothing about this felt normal anymore. I was just doing my job. I said finally, my voice softer than I intended, steady only because I forced it to be. His eyes did not leave mine, not for a second, and that was worse than anger, worse than suspicion, because it felt like he was measuring something deeper, something I could not see. "No," he replied, calm, precise. "You made a choice." And the way he said it made my chest tighten, because he was right. I had seen something, and instead of ignoring it, I had stepped into it, A manager's voice cut through the moment from across the room, calling my name, grounding me just enough to remember where I was supposed to be. I glanced over instinctively, and when I looked back, Jack Wick was still there, still watching, as if the rest of the world had become background noise he could turn off at will. "Go finish your shift," he said, but there was something underneath it. Not a dismissal, not permission, more like a statement that he already knew I would not be able to leave this behind. I nodded quickly, almost too quickly, and stepped away before my legs could betray how unsteady I felt. Every step back to the service station felt longer than it should have, like I was moving through thick air instead of space. And when I finally set the tray down, my hands trembled just enough that I had to press them flat against the counter to steady them. "You look like you saw a ghost," Maria whispered beside me, her voice light, but her eyes curious. I forced a small smile, the kind I had practiced for customers who asked too many questions, and shook my head. "Just tired," I said, and it was not entirely a lie. Exhaustion wrapped around everything, dulling the edges of fear just enough to keep me functioning. But I could still feel it, that invisible thread pulling my attention back across the room. I told myself not to look, told myself to focus on orders, on tables, on anything that belonged to my world. But after a minute, maybe less, I glanced up anyway. Jack Wick was no longer sitting. He stood near the exit now, speaking quietly to one of his men, his posture relaxed but controlled, like nothing that had just happened mattered enough to disturb him. And yet, as if he felt it, his gaze lifted and found mine again across the distance. It was not coincidence, I knew that instantly. Something in my stomach dropped, a realization settling in that I could not shake. I had not just helped him, I had been seen by him. I turned away quickly, my breath catching, focusing on refilling glasses, on writing down orders, on anything that kept my hands moving. Minutes passed, or maybe longer, time slipping in, a way that made it hard to measure. Then the front doors opened, letting in a brief rush of cool night air, and when they closed again, something shifted. I looked up without meaning to and saw that Jack Wick was gone. Relief came first, sharp and immediate, like I could finally breathe again, but it did not last, because sitting on the edge of the service counter, right where I had left my tray, was something that had not been there before. A small, matte black card, clean, simple, deliberate. My name was written on it in precise handwriting. Nothing else, no number, no explanation, just my name, Scarlett Hayes. My fingers hovered over it, hesitant, as if touching it would make everything real in a way I could not undo. Around me, the restaurant continued like always, orders being called, plates being served, the ordinary rhythm of a life that no longer felt entirely mine. I picked up the card slowly, my pulse starting to rise again, and even before I turned it over, I knew this was not an invitation. It was a decision that had already been made for me. I should have thrown the card away the second I picked it up, should have slipped it into the trash with the crumpled receipts and napkins like it meant nothing, like he meant nothing, but my fingers closed around it instead, holding it tighter than I intended, as if letting go would change something I was not ready to face. Scarlett Hayes, written in clean, deliberate strokes, each letter sharp, controlled, unmistakably intentional. And the fact that he had known my name without asking sent a quiet chill down my spine that no amount of warm restaurant lighting could touch. I turned it over slowly, half expecting more. A number, an address, something that would tell me what came next, but the back was blank, smooth, empty in a way that felt louder than words. "You going to frame that, or what?" Maria's voice cut in beside me again, teasing, unaware, and I forced a small laugh that did not reach my chest as I slid the card into the pocket of my apron. "Just a lost item," I said, too quickly, and she raised an eyebrow, but let it go, already moving on to the next order. I tried to do the same, tried to disappear back into the rhythm of the night, the steady loop of taking orders, delivering plates, refilling glasses. But everything felt different now, like I was watching my own life from a step outside of it. Every time the door opened, I glanced up, half expecting him to walk back in, half hoping he would not. Minutes stretched into an hour, then two, the shift dragging in a way it never had before, each second carrying the weight of that single moment I could not undo. By the time the last table left and the chairs were flipped onto tables, my body ached in familiar ways, but my mind refused to settle. I clocked out just after midnight, the numbers on the screen glowing a dull blue that felt colder than usual, and grabbed my jacket from the back room, hesitating for just a second before slipping my hand into my apron pocket to feel the edge of the card still there. I told myself it was nothing, that it was just paper, just ink, just a coincidence that meant less the longer I thought about it. But my pulse betrayed me, quickening as I stepped out into the night. The air outside was cooler, carrying the faint scent of rain that had not quite arrived yet. The streetlights casting long shadows across the nearly empty parking lot behind the restaurant. My car sat alone near the far corner, a 10-year-old sedan that had seen better days, its paint dull under the yellow glow, familiar and safe in a way everything else suddenly was not. I walked toward it, keys already in my hand, my footsteps echoing softer than they should have against the pavement. Halfway there, I felt it again. That same subtle shift in the air I had felt. Inside, like something unseen had just turned its attention toward me. I slowed without meaning to, my grip tightening on the keys as I told myself not to be ridiculous, not to let one strange night rewrite every instinct I had. I reached my car, exhaled quietly, and unlocked it, the soft click sounding louder than it should in the stillness. I pulled the door open, ready to slide inside and shut everything out, but I stopped, because reflected faintly in the dark glass of the window, just beyond my shoulder, was the outline of a figure I had not heard approach. My breath caught, slow and controlled, and I did not turn right away. Not yet. For a second, I just stood there, staring at the reflection, my heartbeat climbing as recognition settled in before I even moved. When I finally turned, he was exactly where I already knew he would be, close enough that the space between us felt intentional, measured. Jackwick did not say anything at first, just looked at me the same way he had inside, like he was still deciding something that only he understood. I swallowed, forcing my voice to stay steady despite everything tightening in my chest. "I thought you left," I said quietly, and his gaze did not waver. "I did," he replied, just as calm, just as certain. "And then I decided you should not be alone tonight." And the way he said it made it clear this was not a suggestion. It was a continuation of the choice I had already made for both of us. I should have been scared, and I was. But it was not the kind of fear that made me run. It was the kind that rooted me in place, sharp and alert, every sense tuned too high as I stood there with my car door half open and Jackwick watching me like he already knew how this would go. The night air felt colder now, slipping under my jacket, brushing against my skin in a way that made everything more real, more immediate. "I can take care of myself," I said, quieter than I meant to, but steady, enough that it did not sound like a question. His expression did not change, not even a flicker, just that same calm focus that made it impossible to tell what he was thinking. "You did," he replied, inside. And something about the way he said it made my chest tighten again, because it was not praise, it was acknowledgement, like he was placing that moment somewhere important. I shifted my weight, forcing myself not to step back, not to give him space he had not asked for, even though every instinct told me I should. "Then why are you here?" I asked, and this time my voice held a little more edge, a small piece of control I refused to give up. For a second, he said nothing, his gaze drifting past me toward the empty stretch of parking lot, scanning in a way that felt automatic, practiced, before returning to me. "Because someone noticed you noticing," he said finally, and the words settled heavy in the space between us. I frowned slightly, trying to understand, replaying the night in my head, every glance, every movement, searching for something I might have missed. "I did not do anything," I said, but even as I said it, I knew it was not true. I had done something. I had stepped into a moment that was never mine. "You did enough," he answered, and there it was again, that certainty, like he was not guessing, not assuming, just stating a fact I had not caught up to yet. A quiet unease curled in my stomach, slow and deliberate, as I glanced around the lot, suddenly aware of how empty it was, how far the nearest street felt, how exposed everything seemed under the dim lights. "So what? I am supposed to just stand here with you?" I asked, a hint of disbelief slipping through despite myself. His lips almost curved, not quite a smile, more like the idea of one, gone before it could fully form. "No," he said, stepping slightly to the side. creating space without breaking the line of attention between us. You are going to get in your car. And the way he said it made it sound simple, like a normal instruction, like this was just another part of my night. I hesitated, my hand still on the door, my mind racing through possibilities I could not fully name. This was the moment, I realized, the one where I could choose to walk away, to get in my car, lock the doors, drive home, and pretend none of this had ever happened. But something held me there, something I could not explain, not fear, not curiosity alone, something deeper that had started the second I spoke to him inside. Slowly, I nodded, sliding into the driver's seat, the familiar creak of the worn leather grounding me just enough to breathe. I pulled the door closed, the sound echoing softly in the quiet, and for a second, I just sat there, hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. Then I noticed it. He had not moved away. Through the windshield, I could see him clearly, standing a few feet in front of the car, not blocking me, not forcing anything, just there, watching, waiting. I rolled the window down halfway, the cool air rushing in again as I looked at him, my pulse starting to climb despite everything. What happens now? I asked, and I hated how much the answer mattered. Jack Wick met my gaze without hesitation, his voice low, controlled, carrying something I could not ignore. Now, he said, you trust me for the next 5 minutes. And the way he said it made it clear this was not a request, not a suggestion, but something far more final, something that had already been decided the moment I chose not to stay quiet. 5 minutes felt like nothing until someone like him asked for it. And suddenly it felt like everything. I tightened my hands around the steering wheel, the worn leather pressing into my palms as I searched his face for something. Anything that would tell me what I was stepping into. But Jack Wick did not give explanations. He gave instructions. 5 minutes for what? I asked, my voice quieter now, not weaker, just more careful, like I was learning the edges of something I could not yet see. He stepped closer to the front of the car, not enough to block me, just enough that I could not ignore him even if I tried. His presence steady, controlled, like the rest of the world had already been accounted for. To leave without being followed, he said, and the words landed heavier than I expected, settling somewhere deep in my chest. My breath caught slightly, and I forced myself to stay still, to think, to not let the rising tension turn into panic. You think someone is watching me? I asked, and even as I said it, I knew the answer mattered more than I wanted it to. His gaze shifted briefly past the car, scanning the far end of the lot where shadows stretched between parked vehicles and dim lights flickered overhead, then back to me. I do not think, he replied calmly. I notice, and something about the certainty in his voice made my pulse pick up again. I glanced in the rearview mirror, the empty space behind me suddenly feeling less empty, like it held something I could not quite see. So what do? I asked, because despite everything, despite the part of me that wanted to drive away and forget all of this, I found myself listening. He did not hesitate. Start the engine, he said. I turned the key, the car coming to life with a familiar low hum that grounded me just enough to keep my hands steady. Do not look at anything except the road, he continued, his voice even, controlled, like he had done this 100 times before. Drive straight out, take a right, then another right, and keep going for exactly 3 blocks, he added, each direction precise, deliberate. I nodded slowly, committing every word to memory, my heartbeat syncing with the rhythm of his instructions. And you? I asked before I could stop myself. For a brief second, something shifted in his expression, not quite softening, but changing enough that I noticed. I will make sure your 5 minutes stay yours, he said. And the way he said it carried a weight I could not fully understand but felt anyway. I hesitated, my foot hovering over the brake, the moment stretching again as doubt tried to creep in. But then I remembered the way he had listened to me inside, the way he had trusted a stranger's warning, without question, and something settled in me. I took a breath, slow and steady, then nodded once more. Okay, I said, and this time, I meant it. I shifted the car into drive, the headlights cutting across the lot as I eased forward, my focus narrowing exactly the way he had told me to. I did not look left, did not look right, did not check for anything beyond the path in front of me, even when instinct screamed at me to be aware of everything. As I passed him, just for a second, I caught a glimpse of him through the corner of my eye, still standing there, still watching, like he was holding something in place that I could not see. Then I was past him, moving toward the exit, the world opening up just enough to breathe again. I followed his directions exactly. Right turn, another right, counting the blocks under my breath as the streets blurred slightly under the glow of streetlights. 1 block, 2, 3. My hands tightened on the wheel as I reached the third, my pulse still elevated, waiting for something to happen, something to confirm that this had all been necessary. But nothing did. The road stayed empty, the night quiet, the city moving on like it always did. And yet, even as the tension began to ease, one thought stayed with me, steady and unshaken. I had trusted him without knowing why, and somewhere in those 5 minutes, something had changed that I could not take back. Because as I drove further away, one realization settled in with quiet certainty. This was not the end of anything. It was the beginning. I kept driving long after the third block, long after the tightness in my chest should have faded, long after the silence of the road started to feel normal again. But it did not feel normal, not even close. Every red light felt like a question, every passing car like something I needed to measure, and I hated how quickly my world had shifted from simple routines to quiet calculations I never used to make. I finally turned onto my street, the familiar row of apartment buildings rising under dim streetlights, peeling paint and flickering signs that had always felt predictable, safe in their own worn way. Tonight, even that felt different. I pulled into my usual spot, the engine idling for a second longer than necessary as I stared at the building in front of me, trying to convince myself that everything had returned to what it was before. It had not. I reached into my pocket without thinking, my fingers brushing against the edge of the card, and just that small contact was enough to bring everything rushing back, his voice, his presence, the way he had said 5 minutes like it meant more than time. I exhaled slowly and turned the engine off, the sudden quiet settling heavy around me. For a moment, I just sat there, hands resting loosely on the wheel, listening to the faint ticking sound of the cooling engine and the distant hum of the city that never really slept. Then I grabbed my bag and stepped out, locking the car behind me with a soft click that sounded louder than it should have. The walk to my building was less than 30 feet, something I had done hundreds of times without thinking. But tonight, every step felt deliberate, like I was aware of each movement in a way that made it impossible to relax. I reached the front door, pulled it open, and stepped inside, the familiar smell of old carpet and cleaning solution wrapping around me like a memory I could not quite hold on to. The hallway lights buzzed faintly overhead, casting uneven shadows along the walls, and I found myself glancing back once before the door closed behind me, just to make sure I was alone. I was, at least. It looked that way. I shook my head slightly, trying to push the thought away, and headed toward the stairs, my footsteps echoing softly as I climbed to the second floor. Apartment 2B had never looked more ordinary. The chipped paint on the door, the slightly crooked number plate, all the small imperfections that used to bother me now feeling like proof that this was real, that this was mine. I unlocked the door and stepped inside, flipping on the light, the small living room coming into view, with its mismatched furniture and the stack of unopened mail on the table. Everything exactly where I had left it. I closed the door behind me, leaned back against it, and finally let out a breath I did not realize I had been holding. For a few seconds, I just stood there, eyes closed, letting the quiet settle, letting the tension drain little by little. This was home. This was normal. This was safe. I pushed away from the door and moved toward the kitchen, setting my bag down and reaching for a glass of water, my hands still not completely steady as I filled it from the tap. I took a sip, then another, grounding myself in the simple action, focusing on something that did not involve him. But even as I tried to move on, my mind refused to let go. I pulled the card from my pocket and set it on the counter, staring at my name written in that same precise hand, the ink as sharp as the memory it carried. "What did you just step into?" I murmured under my breath, the question hanging in the quiet space around me. As if in answer, a soft sound came from the other side of the apartment, so faint I almost missed it. I froze instantly, the glass still in my hand, my pulse jumping back to life as every sense sharpened at once. I listened, holding my breath, waiting for it to happen again. For a moment, there was nothing. Then, just barely, a subtle shift, like something or someone moving where nothing should be. My grip tightened on the glass as I slowly turned my head toward the hallway that led to my bedroom. The light there dimmer, shadows stretching longer than they should. I took one careful step forward, my voice low but steady despite the way my heart was starting to race again. "Hello?" I called out, and the silence that followed felt heavier than any answer could have been, because deep down, I already knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever I thought I left behind in that parking lot had found its way here before me. I should not have said anything, should not have taken that step forward, but the silence in my apartment pressed in too hard, too heavy, like it was waiting for me to break it. "Hello?" I called again, a little louder this time, my voice steady only because I forced it to be, even as my pulse climbed higher with each second that passed without an answer. The hallway ahead stretched longer than it ever had before, the dim light casting shadows that felt unfamiliar, like the space had changed while I was gone. I moved slowly, one step at a time, my senses sharp, every small sound amplified. The faint hum of the refrigerator behind me, the soft creak of the floor under my feet, the quiet rhythm of my own breathing. Halfway down the hall, I stopped, listening, waiting, trying to separate imagination from reality. But there it was again, subtle, controlled, not loud enough to be accidental, not soft enough to ignore. Something was here. I swallowed, my grip tightening around the glass in my hand before I realized how useless it would be if anything actually happened, and I set it down carefully on the small table by the wall, freeing my hands even though I did not know what I would do with them. "If someone is in here, you need to leave," I said, and the words sounded stronger than I felt, hanging in the air with a confidence I was not sure I had earned. For a moment, nothing moved, nothing changed, and I almost convinced myself that I had imagined everything, that the long night, the tension, the unfamiliar weight of everything that had happened had finally caught up with me. Then a voice answered, low, controlled, unmistakable. "You should not make demands you cannot enforce." And my breath caught instantly, recognition hitting before fear fully settled in. I turned toward the sound, my heart racing now, not from uncertainty, but from the sudden clarity of knowing exactly who stood just out of sight. "Jack Wick," I said, his name leaving my lips before I could stop it, part accusation, part disbelief. He stepped into view from the shadowed edge of the hallway, exactly as composed as he had been outside, like he belonged here in a way that made no sense at all. "Your door lock is easy to bypass," he said, as if that explained everything, as if that was the part one should focus on. I stared at him, a mix of frustration and something sharper building under my skin. "You cannot just show up in my apartment," I said, my voice tighter now, the fear shifting into something more controlled, more grounded. His gaze met mine, steady, unshaken. "I can," he replied calmly. "And tonight, you are going to be glad I did." The certainty in his tone made me pause, just for a second, long enough for doubt to slip back in. "You said I would not be alone for 5 minutes," I said, my voice quieter now, trying to piece together the connection between then and now. "It has been longer than that." He nodded once, a small, deliberate movement. "And you made it home," he said, like that was the point, like everything else was a continuation. I frowned slightly, my mind racing to catch up. "So what is this?" I asked, gesturing faintly around the apartment, the familiar space that no longer felt entirely mine. "Protection." For the first time, something shifted in his expression, not softer, but more focused, like he was deciding how much to say. "Adjustment," he answered, and the word landed strangely, like it carried more meaning than it should. I shook my head, a quiet frustration building as I tried to understand. "I did not ask for any of this," I said, and that at least was true. His gaze did not waver. "No," he said, "you chose it." And there it was again, that same idea he had repeated since the beginning. Like every step I had taken had already been counted, already been understood in ways I could not see. I exhaled slowly, trying to steady myself, trying to find solid ground in a situation that refused to stay simple. "Then explain it to me," I said finally, my voice low but firm. "Because right now, it just feels like you are controlling everything around me." For a moment, he said nothing, just watched me, measuring, calculating in that quiet way that made it impossible to look away. Then he stepped closer, not threatening, not forcing, just closing the distance enough that I could feel the shift in the air between us. "I am not controlling everything," he said, his voice lower now, more deliberate. "I am removing the parts that could hurt you." And something about the way he said it made my chest tighten again, not from fear this time, but from the weight of what it implied. Because standing there, in my own apartment, looking at a man who moved through the world like nothing could touch him, I realized something that changed everything again. This was not about 5 minutes anymore. This was about what came after. I did not know whether to feel safer or more trapped, and that uncertainty sat heavy in my chest as I studied him, trying to understand how someone could stand in my apartment and speak about removing danger like it was a simple inconvenience. "You do not get to decide what hurts me," I said, the words coming out sharper now, steadier, because if I let that line blur, I would lose something I was not ready to give up. Jackwick did not react immediately, just watched me with that same quiet intensity, like he was weighing my response instead of resisting it. "You are right," he said after a moment, and the calm agreement caught me off guard, just enough to make me hesitate. "But I do decide what reaches you," he added, and that was different, more precise, like he was drawing a boundary I could not see but was already inside of. I shook my head slightly, trying to push back against the logic of it, against the way his words kept settling into place even when I did not want them to. "You are talking like I am part of something," I said, my voice lower now, more controlled. "Like I do not have a choice in this." His gaze did not waver. "You had a choice," he said, and there it was again. That same point returning like it mattered more than anything else. "And you used it when you spoke to me tonight." I exhaled slowly, the memory flashing sharp in my mind. That moment, that instinct, the split second where I stepped forward instead of staying back. That was one moment, I replied, but even as I said it, I knew it had not stayed just one moment. His head tilted slightly, not dismissive, not amused, just considering. "One moment is enough," he said quietly, "when it changes the direction of everything after it." The weight of that settled deeper than I expected, and for a second, I did not have an answer, did not have anything to push back with. The apartment felt smaller now, the walls closer, the space between us more defined, like something invisible had shifted into place. I crossed my arms lightly, more to ground myself than to block him, my eyes narrowing just slightly as I tried to find something solid to hold on to. "So what happens now?" I asked, and this time the question was not about the next 5 minutes. It was about everything that came after. Jackwick studied me for a long moment before answering, his expression unchanged but his attention sharper, more deliberate. "Now you stop being predictable," he said, and the answer was not what I expected, not what I was prepared for. I frowned, confusion slipping through despite myself. "I have a job, a routine, a life," I said, gesturing faintly around me. "That is not something I can just turn off." He took a step closer, not enough to crowd me, just enough to make the space between us feel intentional again. "Routine is how people get found," he said, his voice low, controlled. "And tonight, someone saw you in the wrong place at the wrong time." My pulse quickened at that, the earlier unease returning with sharper edges now. "You keep saying that," I said, "but you still have not told me who or why." For the first time, there was a pause, not hesitation, but a deliberate gap, like he was choosing his words with more care than before. "Because knowing that changes how you react," he said finally. "And right now, I need you to listen, not react." Frustration flickered under my skin, but so did something else, something quieter, harder to name. Trust, maybe not fully formed, but present enough to make me stay instead of walking away. I exhaled slowly, letting the tension settle just enough to think clearly. "Then tell me what you want me to do," I said, my voice steady again, not surrendering, just choosing to move forward. His gaze held mine, unbroken, certain. "For tonight," he said, "you stay exactly where I can see you." And the words were simple, but the meaning behind them was not. Because in that moment, standing in my own apartment with a man who had already shifted the direction of my life without raising his voice, I realized something that made everything else fall into place. This was Not about control in the way I understood it. This was about survival in a world I had stepped into without realizing the cost. I stood there for a moment longer than I should have, letting his words settle into the quiet space around me, feeling the weight of them in a way that made it impossible to pretend this was temporary. Staying where he could see me sounded simple, almost harmless, but nothing about tonight had been simple, and I knew better than to believe it would stay that way. I moved slowly, deliberately, stepping back into the living room, choosing the small space near the couch where the light was clearer, followed with his eyes, not his feet, his attention steady, controlled, like distance did not change his ability to be exactly where he needed to be. I crossed my arms lightly again, not defensive, just grounding, and looked at him directly. "And after tonight?" I asked, because that question had been building since the moment he appeared in the parking lot. Since the moment I realized this was not something I could walk away from. He did not answer right away, his gaze shifting briefly to the window, scanning the street outside, as if the world beyond my apartment mattered just as much as what was inside it, then back to me. "After tonight," he said slowly, "you do not go back to being invisible." The words landed differently than everything else he had said, not a warning, not an instruction, something closer to a fact that had already taken shape. I frowned slightly, trying to understand what that meant in real terms, in the life I knew. "I am already invisible," I said, a quiet truth slipping out before I could filter it. "People like me are not the ones anyone pays attention to." His expression shifted just enough for me to notice, not disagreement, not correction, just a sharper focus. "That was before," he replied, and something in his tone made it clear he was not going to argue the point, because to him, it was already resolved. I exhaled slowly, my mind trying to catch up again, to find something solid in all of this. "So what? I change everything?" I asked, the question carrying more weight than I intended. "My job, my routine, my life?" For a moment, he did not speak, just watched me, measuring, like he was deciding how much of the truth I could handle. Then he stepped closer again, not enough to close the space completely, just enough to make the distance feel intentional, controlled. "You adapt," he said, his voice low, steady, "or you get pulled back into something you do not understand." The certainty in his words sent a quiet tension through me, not fear exactly, but something close, something that made me realize how little I actually knew about what I had stepped into. I glanced down for a second, my fingers brushing against the edge of the counter behind me, grounding myself in something real, something unchanged. When I looked back up, he was still watching, still waiting, like this moment mattered more than anything else. "And you?" I asked, because that part still felt unanswered, still felt like the piece I could not place. "Where do you fit in all of this?" His gaze held mine without hesitation. "I do not fit," he said, calm as ever. "I decide." The answer should have frustrated me, should have made me push back harder, but instead it settled into place with everything else, forming a pattern I was only just starting to see. I shook my head slightly, a quiet breath leaving me as I leaned back just enough to feel the wall behind me. "You make it sound like I do not have a choice anymore," I said, not accusing, just stating what it felt like. He took one final step closer, stopping just short of crossing the last bit of space between us, his presence filling the room without effort. "You always have a choice," he said, his voice lower now, more deliberate, "but choices have direction." I held his gaze, the meaning of that settling in deeper than anything else he had said, because I understood it now, not fully, not completely, but enough to know what he meant. Tonight had not been random, not something I could dismiss as coincidence or bad luck. It had been a point, a line I had crossed without realizing where it led. I straightened slightly, my shoulders steadying as something shifted inside me. Not surrender, not acceptance, something closer to clarity. "And if I choose to walk away?" I asked, my voice even, testing the one option that still felt like it belonged to me. For the first time since he stepped into my apartment, Jack Wick did not answer immediately. He looked at me, really looked, like he was considering not just the question, but the person asking it. Then he spoke, quiet, certain, leaving no room for misunderstanding. "Then I will walk with you," he said, and the words landed with a finality that changed everything. Because in that moment, I realized something that settled deeper than fear, deeper than doubt. This was not about whether I stayed or left. This was about the fact that wherever I went next, he was already part of it.